Okay. There is a way to get this on Instagram, and I think I finally figured it out. And I think that's working. So I'm trying to hopefully. No, every time I try this, I mean, I do it the old school way, but I've been trying to, hey, everybody, we'll be right there. I just still go camera to camera because so many more people watch us live.
Mm,
Oh, okay.
right
Yeah.
on.
That makes sense, especially these days.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, what?
Okay. Let me expand our page. Turn that off. Expand. All right. Do not hide the chat. Okay, here we go. All right. Hey, Latinx heroes. All right, here we go. Peace, everybody. I'm a little under the weather, so my voice is a little deeper. Although I could probably do a movie or a documentary with this voice. I don't. Um,
It's sexy.
I know.
You got that Cat Brooks cigarette voice going on.
That's what it is. It's so funny because my niece has that. So peace, everybody. Thank you for joining me again. Wednesday with Disrupt the Chaos. My show is sponsored by Cooperation Jackson. I'm trying to bring in people who I consider are disruptors all the way. And I share organizations, but please follow Cooperation Jackson, follow Soul Fire Farm, follow Anti-Police Terror Network with Cat Brooks, Dara. Like follow folks and folks. If you don't know who Dara Baldwin is or Cat, you're gonna be like, where have they been all my life? Because I like realize it's only been 8 days he's in office, although I feel it's been 10 years. So like, I and because I don't go anywhere because I don't get no gigs. I'm always home writing. I'm always like disorientated. Like, wait, 8 days? Like, what the
Yeah.
is going on? So, please, if you want to get involved with the chat, you have to go to YouTube because it's streaming live on YouTube. One day I'll figure out Instagram, but I tell everybody on Instagram, and they love it, and they know that they could, they can watch it on YouTube. And I can't add anybody to my chat, and although that could be a troll, so I don't believe none of that. All right, so here we are. I really wanted to get Black women's voices in with people that I feel are super revolutionary, who inspire me, who meeting them really did change my life in the best of ways, especially knowing that they are also being attacked. Right? And I believe on a daily. So first we got Dara Baldwin. I'm going to read the bio from her new book, which we will get into. Yes. Dara Baldwin is an activist, scholar, and an author with over 20 years of experience in policy and social justice work. She currently runs her own equity consulting firm, De Madrina LLC. And I love that because Madrina means godparent in Spanish, which was fascinating to read that you were born in Spain. I was like, whoa. You could turn on, Dara, turn on your mic. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I was. Yes.
I was like, that's amazing. She formerly held the position of Director of National Policy for the Center for Disability Rights. She has led multiple national and international advocacy campaigns as an expert in disability law and policy. She works on housing, transportation, equity, criminal justice, and many other areas. And then, as well as Cat Brooks, which I just learned this when I was interviewing Sonali, who was like, Cap's an artist too. I said, yeah. She's like, no, like she went and trained at the Royal National Theatre School in London. And I was like, no, I didn't know that part. Somebody has a little bit of feedback.
Hello.
Is it me?
Might be me. Okay. Okay, it's not there anymore. So she is the host of KPFA's Law and Disorder, as well as a resident artist with the Lower Bottom Players in Oakland, Three Girls Theater in San Francisco. She trained at the Royal National Theatre Studio in London. Notable roles include Lady Macbeth at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. Oh my God, will you ever do that again?
Yeah, I actually want to do a walkabout Macbeth in the flats in the West in
Oh,
Oakland.
yeah.
Especially right now. Listen.
Yes.
Yes.
It's about to happen. I just gotta raise the money for it.
Yeah.
Oh, Dara, we gotta let V know to support. We got
Yeah.
We're gonna do that.
Real talk. Real talk.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for real. She's been nominated Best Featured Actress by the Bay Area Theater Circle critics, and Tasha won Best of the SF Fringe in 2017. She's the co-founder and executive director of the Anti-Police Terror Project, whose mission is to eradicate police terror in communities of color. As an organizer, she played a central role in the struggle for justice for Oscar Grant, and I spent the last 14 years working with impacted communities and families to rapidly respond to police violence. Kat was the runner-up in Oakland's 2018 mayor election, facing incumbent Libby Schaaf. So I met Dara after Trump won the first time. We were all at a retreat. And I'm glad I did the retreat, but I was like super frustrated after we left around like, even now, there's not enough Black women in this room, and we have a very different way of looking at things. And you walk into spaces with that kind of level of privilege, and I think people just like, I'm this person, and I'm like, I don't roll like that. And I just connected with Dara. And it was so nice when you came to my 50th birthday party, like you straight drove from DC. So, and then I know Kat definitely when the Oscar Grant murder took place, because that happened New Year's Eve, right after 2008 when me and Cynthia ran. And I guess maybe I was in North Carolina in 2009. Yeah. I don't know if I got a text or Khalil Kuno, and then it started coming out. And then the footage was released. And it's interesting because even though that was 15 years ago, the level of camera quality wasn't great or in all people's hands, but unfortunately in this it was. And I know you had a lot to do with also helping Ryan, talk to families, Ryan Coogler, and about the movie he wanted to be made. But you've also done this work where you also center the families. But for me, I don't think there's any police killing that I don't get from you and your analysis, because never one time are you like, we got to vote people in. I mean, except if it was me or you or Dara, then we'd be like,
that part.
But no, kind of thing. So first, I just wanted to check in with you. How are you all doing and your families after we never have a low, but I mean, we definitely from November to January, we're more anticipating. I feel like people took December, especially our people in our generation, to kind of be quiet, to like fortify themselves. So how do you feel? And second, I was reading this article from Charles Blow. For those that don't know, he's a great New York Times editor, and he packed up and moved to the South a couple of years ago. But his editorial a couple of days after was like, people don't want to talk about this anymore. And he's like, and it's your right. Like, take your time, get it together for you and your families. It's a long struggle. And I really liked hearing that from someone like him, because I don't think sometimes people that aren't intimately involved always want us to be like on the ready. So yes, how are both of you doing?
Go ahead, Kat.
Oh, all right. Well, the first thing I have to say is I didn't play that much of a role in the Ryan Coogler film. I am very connected, however, to the family of Oscar Grant, his mother, his uncle, and walked that walk with them. I'm okay. I did take 3 weeks, which might be the longest I've taken off of work in 15 years, to travel with my daughter and sit. I knew he was going to be president the first time.
Yeah.
Me and Mitch Jeserich used to argue about it on the air all the time, and I knew he was going to be president this time. Do you know what I mean? And people are like, no. I'm like, this is who America is. right? Like they've been able to mask it and calm spin it and, all the other things they do about it and hide all of the really ugly, dirty stuff that this country does all over the globe from the masses, particularly if you're not going to go further than CNN, right? But this is who we are. And for me, even though I know that things are going to be intense, to say the least, I prefer, right? I prefer what did Malcolm say? And I always summarize it wrong, right? But I prefer the man who tells me who he is, as opposed to a man that pretends that they're an angel and ain't nothing but a devil. I know what I'm dealing with, right? Therefore, I can strategize better and I can organize better. And at least here in Oakland, and I think actually across the country, because because of defund, because we've been having these conversations about non-carceral response to community crisis, a lot of us have built up these mutual aid networks,
Right.
and so we're in a place that if we could stop eating each other, we could actually, build systems of resistance and actually just sustainment for us, right? And so I'm trying to think about how to protect our people. I'm trying to think about what organizing looks like in a context like this, where, and we don't really mess with the federal level a lot, right? Like we focus on the state and the very, very local level. But even our governor has lost his mind. So I'm trying to think about what is self-determination and mutual aid and community built systems really look like in this moment. I guess my biggest concern is if all the people that have been keyboard warriors are actually really ready to get about that business.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that, because I think our generation, in terms of organizing and activists, we didn't have any of this 15 years ago or 20 years ago. Like, you were straight going on the train, at least in New York, you're going to the laundromat, the bodega, the streets, and I now see, unfortunately, how the next generation, I call them, for my political purposes, the post, the brother who got executed,
George Floyd.
Troy Davis.
Troy Davis.
Post Troy Davis, post Barack Obama generation,
Mm-hmm.
with social media, right? So the mistake is that happened, which first relying on this platform, which we already know is slowly being taken away. Then you realize that generation, they don't even know how to go up to somebody and have a convo, or if somebody's like, F that, I gotta pay my rent. You're like, no, right? Like, they don't have those skills, and then the hyper visibility is what we have seen with the complete turn to electoral politics, is why, in my belief, not only is the left in shambles, we don't have a national movement.
That's right.
And that's bad or good. So, Dara, what are your reflections as well?
Yeah, so peace and blessings, everyone. Thank you for having me, Rosa. It's so nice to meet you, Kat. Is there feedback, or are you okay?
Well, you're good. Yeah.
Okay. So, as Rosa said, I'm Dara Baldwin, and I'm coming to you. I live and work in Washington, D.C. D.C. statehood, D.C. statehood, D.C. statehood. I have to always say that. Mm-hmm. So when you ask how I'm doing the best I can, is what I tell you every day. I did the same thing. I stopped working like December 10th, I think it was, and I didn't come back to January 9th or something. Mm-hmm. Literally just turning off and preparing myself for what was going to happen. Two things, let me say it this way. So one is, being a resident of the district, we are getting hit even in a different way than any other place in this country, because we have to live with him in our backyard. He is literally, right? And when people used to talk to me about DC should never be a state, now we have to. And we have gotten together and created a resistance. It's called Free DC, the Free DC Project, which means that we're going to be in solidarity with our neighbors. So he is already discussing taking over our control of the district. We are in urban planning, there is no name for us. We're not a city. We are the district. And so what does that mean? People don't understand that before 1967, the president ran the District of Columbia. That it took us a long time to get home rule, which means we have a mayor and a city council that we, the residents of DC, vote for as our leadership. So we're working on that front. So on that front, I'm doing that work. We are also a sanctuary city, so that we're getting people to say, we will be in solidarity. We will not turn in our neighbors who we think are immigrants, regardless of which one. Legal, illegal, we don't believe in that. We are also an LGBTQ sanctuary. We are not going to turn in our trans community because we have unisex bathrooms here. We've had them for 5 years. We're not going to do that. We're telling our children not to do that at school, right? So those kinds of things are happening, which gives me hope, Rosa. And like you were saying about not having a national movement, well, we have one here in DC. And in DC Statehood, there's about 6 organizations who work on DC Statehood. We call it the DC Statehood Table. We all came together the 2 days after the election and said, we have to do this. And I'm like you, Kat. And if you read my book, To Be a Problem, I talk about how I won bets. I won about 10 bets in 2016 that Trump will win. And now I won about 16 this time because America is not ready, as Rosa touched, to have a Black woman leading anything. And these white women can sit here, and I talked to those white women, right? White women for Kamala, and I was like, I don't trust any of you. You are going to vote for this man. We can't even work with you in a regular nonprofit area, the nonprofit industrial complex. You don't like when you have to even talk to us, let alone let us lead something. And I keep telling these people, and I love you brought in Brother Malcolm X, let's talk about Audre Lorde. And she said the master's tools will not dismantle the master's house. That's and that these white folks don't understand that you cannot lead this work. The oppressors cannot remove the oppression. And so that's part of the problem we're having in this country, Rosa, when you talk about not having a national movement. And that part, it doesn't scare me because I'm not afraid of much anything. It just it sickens me because I'm tired of tired of the same people over and over again doing the same thing. And so white folks don't want to move out the way. And then I am tired of, you touched on it a little bit, I'm gonna go there. We call them the lights, camera, action. People who want to be on TV and do all these things and then talk about their movement, they making some movements, right? That's on lights, camera, action. That's what we call them. And I'm tired of those people who try to lead, right? Like telling us that, oh, Kamala's going to win and this is what's going to happen, and not being prepared for when Kamala doesn't win. And when we said, and I said, we tell you, dictators do whatever they want to do. It's how we're going to respond to that. And I don't see any plan for how we respond to that. So that's how I'm doing, Rosa. I'm ready. And these people are not ready here because they are more concerned about their pocketbooks and how they look to the community than the community itself.
You know what? I was on a call because I had said, I was like, I'm so done with electoral politics. I mean, I had made that choice a while ago. I always, I'm still a registered Green, but it was funny because my daughter's like, Mom, I'm not voting for Jill Stein or Auntie Melina. I was like, girl, I know. She's like, Mom, it's a Black woman. I got to do it. I was like, girl, do you. The fact that she was 18 and like A, B, C, D, E kind of stuff. But 2 things that both of you, me saying I don't see a national movement, what you just described to me, Dara, and what other people are doing is we've already been engaged in our local communities, and it's okay. Like, I'm not going to performative freaking march ever in MLK. The Women's March, we know what they've done to all the 3 cities. I don't even know what that organization's about. I mean, I was like, y'all want to spend $200,000, $300,000 to get people to do what? Because there's also a complete failure of understanding poor and working class people. Like we are getting hit hard, but I'm not getting hit as hard as my cousins in the Bronx. I'm not going to get as hard hit with my titi in the Bronx who needs SNAP benefits, and then somebody tells her they're done, or they go to the Medicaid, and there was issues already when he put out that he was going to freeze everything, and so what they've successfully done, I think, is they have us all definitely now and feeling more like the attacks on each other and nonsense that we don't have time for. Like, I'm going to be living less than what I am now. I ain't got time for this no more.
Right.
And with white folks, I kind of see, look, if 50% of white women voted for Trump twice, every time I go somewhere, I'm like 4 white women. The data,
There you go.
shows.
There you go.
Numbers show that. So all the white women beat me. I'm like, this is interesting now, right? Like, but also that the like other white whatever allies, accomplices, I think they enjoy us like going to the events to be a mascot and like, hey, look who just showed up, Cat Brooks and Dara, and I'm like, I'm over that too. You know, I'm like, look, the attack we knew was coming on the nonprofits. Everybody's struggling to survive. But Dara, like, how do you keep it together that you're in DC and is it every moment it's like, oh, something just happened? Is that like where you're at?
No, I've never been that way, and I've been here in DC for almost 20. I came in 2007, but I've been doing the work since 2004, and I work on the Hill, meeting with Congress to pass bills. Right, I'm one of the few activist policy. I'm a federal registered lobbyist, right, and there's only about 5 Black women who are actually federally registered lobbyists right here in DC. I don't do that. You would lose your mind. You know, I pick and choose what I need to engage in. Sometimes I'm called on and asked, and I say, okay, let me review it, and I'll tell you. But what really upsets me and what you talked about is what happened. We told people these things could happen. I hate to mention it, but it is what it is. Project 2025, which was not new, right? It was, the Contract for America. It's just that they revised it, right? And this is the difference with these conservatives and these progressives. They think they're different, right? I'm with you. Progressives, I keep asking them, what does it mean? Who are you? You are still just as racist as these MAGA folks. But like Kat said and Malcolm said, I'd rather know who my enemy is, right? Y'all are covert about your racism. You just want to move things around. You are just as afraid as the MAGA folks of being a minority. And so you keep doing things. But here's the difference in these conservatives. And this is why they are doing what they're doing. They get these young folks, young people, mostly men, who come up and say, we got this idea. And they say, okay, sit down. We're going to give you a high 6-figure job, like 2 something. And you write something out, go ahead and do it. And we're going to see what we can do. We're going to take the spaghetti and throw it against the wall. That's something in business. I don't know if people have heard that, but it's like take spaghetti. Whatever lands is what we're going to do. Now, these Democrats that everybody, and I'm with you, Rosa, I listen. I can't stand either one of these parties. Don't do nothing for us. And these Democrats sitting here and doing nothing. The Democrats don't even want to boil the water to make spaghetti. And they come and they tell you, if you knew, you have to pay your dues. We don't know who you are. So you sit over here and do some things and then we'll come back. And meanwhile, innovation and everything else is gone, right? You want to have these young folks here doing internships and fellowships, getting paid no money. Right. So this is who we have here in DC trying to create change. So no, I don't engage in that. And I'm with you too. I'm going into Scholar. I'm teaching now. I have turned myself and said, I'm going to work locally. Like I said, free DC and resistance on DC. I have no faith in the Democratic Party. This weekend is the DNC. They're about to vote for a new chair and all of that. I don't understand why we keep connecting to them. We need new parties. Let's just get rid of them. It's 90-something. It's 90% of us voted for the person who we thought could make change. There's enough of us to create a new party, which is another thing that progressives are afraid of. So no, I don't do that. I engage in the things that need to be told. Like what happened yesterday needed to be told to the community and needed to be told by people who knew what they were talking about. As you saw what I sent out, I also sent out the guidances and said they're suing. I don't think this will happen. And the last thing I say about this is the usual suspects got together and said, we're going to do a rally. What is it? March, Move On and all them groups. We're going to do a rally in front of the White House. And I was like, why would you be in front of the White House? The lack of strategy in that lets me know we cannot have a bunch of people here who don't understand process, because the stupidity in going in front of the White House is the White House did what they were going to do. You're not going to change that man's mind. Now what happened? He had to change it. That didn't. But the people who need to be doing this work are in Congress. And those Democrats who y'all say, oh, we voted them, now we're going to hold them accountable. What is holding them accountable? 14 senators just voted for this immigration bill this man signed today. 48 House members and Democrats voted for that bill. When are you going to hold them accountable?
And they're also voting for the nominees. I was stupid to think that even with that, every Democrat wouldn't. And then I'm hearing, and 12 Democrats with them. And I'm like, this is why you are so hated. Like, these Republicans never break anything. And also, they are mad. University and colleges all have organizations for the Republicans and the Democratic Party. What Dara is saying is all the Republicans get training before they even go to college to be part of that. So, Kat, because you are super strategic and have done so much work. First, can you tell people what the Anti-Police Terror Project is, and then how are you looking in what kind of strategies we should be thinking about?
Yes. So the Anti-Police Terror Project, as we were talking about earlier, was born 15 years ago out of the struggle for justice for Oscar Grant. And, really, we were born to be visionary, not reactionary. Really, we were born to reject the paradigm that all we can do is respond after the fact, right? They kill us, we move. They shut down our schools, we move. And we define state violence in the broadest of terms. So we're about the business of interrupting state terror from happening in the first place. And we do that through creating alternative models for community crisis response, family support, research policy, communications, and healing justice as an organizing strategy. And we do dabble at the local and state level in terms of policy. When we first started, we didn't do policy at all, because for us that was about reform, and we don't believe that anything about this system can be reformed or fixed, or should it be. But then we were like, well, we're kind of sitting on a radical Black high horse over here while our people are suffering, deeply. And so for us, we said it's all roads in, but it's all roads in on our terms. So I should say I did not vote for Kamala. And my discussion about Kamala was not another bomb. Oh, and by the way, I'm accountable to all these families out here that you never charged the cops
For any of them.
for any of the murders that happened under your white supremacist boot, while you were.
But was good at passing a law to arrest the parents of truant teenagers.
Listen. So I'll just say that, and I also just felt like she got as if she wasn't the vice president as this country was sending bombs to blow up children.
Exactly.
So I did vote for Auntie Melina. And it's funny though, Rosa, and I'm sorry, I'm digressing a little bit and I'll backtrack. My daughter said the same thing, but she didn't tell me till after the fact. So it was also her first election.
Yeah.
And I thought she had voted. In fact, I was on Melina's show with Dr. West, and I was like, oh, my baby voted for you. She was like,
no, I didn't. I was like, it's all good.
She said I did everything, because she asked me how to vote. She said, I did everything else you said. But I was like, I'm glad that you are asserting, right, your right to be self-determined in your decisions, and you're developing your own strategic thinking. So anyway, so we do a lot that we dabble at the state and the local levels on our own terms. And what that means is we do not support any policy or legislation that reinforces the status quo. So we're never going to say, yes, let's spend another $5 trillion trying to teach white supremacy to not be biased or racist. And I don't believe in implicit, explicit bias. Racism is racism. Yes, let's spend more money on body cameras, right? None of that. We support legislation, and our Deputy Director, James Birch, has been critical in passing legislation like the decertification of cops, like the Crisis Act, which was my baby, which took money out of the state budget and gave it, was supposed to give it to grassroots organizations to build non-carceral community response models. Now, of course, we did that, and then the state took it back and gave it to the org that they wanted to give it to. So we working on Crisis Act 2.0. We supported the Racial Profiling Act. That's the kind of legislation that we engage in. And I think very much so that there are people that should be still doing that work. I don't think that is my work. Right. That is not the work of APTP right now, right? So our work is, first of all, one of the other mistakes that is like COVID hit, and I get that we were all confused and lost and scared, and we stopped pushing out organizers. The right didn't, but we stopped churning out organizers. And so one of our first critical concerns is building back up a pipeline of organizers, right? And so we've identified the youth groups that do work that is aligned with the kind of work that we do, and we're creating those pipelines. Healing justice as an organizing strategy. So, and I'm not telling you all anything you don't already know. Our analysis is, in the same way that the party understood that if you were worried about a light bill or you were sick or you were hungry, that it made it that much more difficult to struggle for your liberation.
And Kat is talking about the Black Panther Party, not
Yes.
the Democratic Party.
Yes. Yes. Yes, the only party that I give that kind of reverence to, the only one. Hence the development of the 70+ survival programs. We believe that trauma acts in the same way. That between our generational trauma and the daily trauma, that all of that stuff, right, that we push down so we can make a cup of coffee or take our kids to school, prevents us from engaging in liberatory struggle. And so we do healing justice as an organizing strategy. We address our people's trauma to heal them in order to build a resilience, so that they can fight better. So we don't talk about self-care, right? It's collective care and healing justice, and that's another conversation. But we have clinics, right? We got clinics where, and we're in the hood, where folks come in and they can get detox foot soaks, they can get herbal medicine, they build relationships with holistic practitioners. We're dealing with diabetes, blood pressure, heart stuff, and then we're in partnership with Western medicine organizations that are values aligned, where we know, like, if this is something that we can't do, or you need additional, right, because these two things have to work together, we can send you to this place, and they're not going to treat you like you don't deserve to be there. They're not going to treat you like you're a med seeker, right? So we're interrupting the things that kill our people, dealing with the trauma. We're interrupting the things when trauma explodes in this intercommunal violence, giving out food, having support groups, right, of various kinds inside, teaching people self-defense, what security should and does look like.
Hey, keep going. No, keep going.
These are the models that you can build. So we train everybody on our community crisis response, which is called mental health first. And we respond to mental health, substance abuse, interpersonal violence. And sometimes just, I laugh a lot. I say, if the wind blows the wrong way in Oakland, people call it APTP because we're going to respond. We train people on all of that. And you don't have to become a member of APTP. I want you to take these principles and go build your own cohort. We respond when, we work with, there's another organization out here, Community Ready Corps, our sister organization, founded by one of the co-founders of APTP, Terhaak. And they serve the people in terms of COVID kits. So when COVID hit in Oakland, we told our city council, which had lots of Black faces on it, that, America got a cold, East Oakland is going to catch the flu, because that's what happens to Black people. And if you don't and the conditions were already dire and disastrous, if you do not frontline load resources, it's going to be an unmitigated disaster. Well, guess what? It was an unmitigated disaster, and it was Community Red Corps that got people COVID masks. When these fires spark up out here, right? We make sure people have the right masks. So for us, it's about continuing to develop organizers, training people in our programs of mutual aid, and really digging deep this year up what organizing is and what organizing is not.
Yeah.
Right? Because people forget that it's actually a craft. You actually have to be trained in it. It actually has metrics and stuff, right? That makes it successful. So those are and then me and my big old mouth, right? And there's a lot of being in deep conversation, and also just real loud conversation with our people, and when it warrants it, with the state.
So, Kat, you mentioned trauma, and you are part of this new book that came out talking about abolition. A police-free world is possible, by the incredible Sonali Cole.
Oh, yeah. I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, it's here. Yeah, I have my copy.
Oh, right on. I was so honored. I have been a Sonali fan since I was 20-something, and was driving to Community Coalition, which was a different place and time then. I have to say that now. Driving to Community Coalition at 20-something. To be in her book now, I'm like,
she's amazing.
I'm a big girl now.
She, been affected by the wildfires. She was talking now about her house was safe, but that she was having survivor's guilt. And that happens, especially, I've covered so many climate disasters. It does happen, But so in the book, you talk about this. I'm quoting from your answer. I'm not only a survivor of domestic violence, I'm also a survivor of state intervention into that violence.
Mhm.
One night when I lived in Las Vegas, my then husband had beaten me pretty severely. He called the police. The police came, even though I was the one covered in bruises and blood and clearly had been viciously attacked. And even though it was apparent that my husband was fine, I went to jail. And I actually went to jail under laws like mandatory arrest laws and primary aggressor laws that my mother, a domestic violence activist in Nevada, had helped pass in the state. As a result, I never called the police again. And what I know now after being in this work for almost 2 decades is that this is true for Black and Brown women in particular. We just don't call 911. And that is so real. I mean, I myself was in two situations, but the second one, it, even when you're in it and you have the politics, the second one, not only did I call the police, had him arrested, but then the next night I went and picked him up and went away with him. And there would be another time of violence, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So like this was so I'm sure I don't know if you talked about it before, but that was deep in that thinking of that moment, you know, like what the F? Like
Right.
what
That part.
and you know, so was it cathartic to tell this? Is this part of your story that maybe some of us just didn't know yet?
It was cathartic to tell, and it actually came to me that was a moment of me being politicized that I hadn't actually sat with in that way, right? It wasn't until I started talking about non-carceral response to community crisis, starting with mental health and then substance abuse, and then talking about IPV and DV, that I was like, oh, I'm actually, because I've never had anybody murdered by the police, and so I've never referred to myself as an impacted family member or person, even though all of us, Black, brown in this country, are impacted by the violence of the state in some way. When we turned our attention to intimate partner violence, I was like, right, all this stuff came up, and I was like, oh, that's me too. And then I thought about and started as I started to move in the world, and all of these people telling me, I just took the beatings. I just, we went back to what we used to do, right? Where the auntie came and stayed at the house for, they did that, or they went underground, or they died, right? Or they died. So yes, cathartic, but for me, the most cathartic thing is organizing to build systems that don't rely on law enforcement to respond to things like that anymore. And it's a harder conversation to have. So when we said that police shouldn't respond to mental health crisis, some people balked, but mostly they were like, eventually they got to, yeah, okay. I mean, that's one of the successes of the defund movement. People say we lost and it's over. It's not over, first of all. One of the things that we won is that even in like Nebraska, right, people are aware of the fact that we shouldn't send badges and guns to mental health crisis. But when you start talking about we shouldn't send the cops to IPV or domestic violence situations, right? People are like, "Are you nuts?" And I'm yes, and we've got almost 50 years of sending people to prison. Oftentimes survivors that are there because they defended themselves. But let's talk about causes of harm, right? We send them to prison. They get out because, FYI, fun fact, almost everybody that goes to jail and prison eventually comes home. We send people that have learned to express their trauma through violence to the most violent institutions in the world, and then we spit them back out with no resources, support, counseling, nothing. And then we're surprised when they repeat the behavior. Right. And so you'll never achieve peace with violence, and the carceral state is nothing but violence. And so we believe in holistic care and response. We care about the cause of the harm. We want to address his or her, their root cause issues, like why are you expressing your trauma this way, as well as the survivor. And also a lot of, to your point, Rose, a lot of survivors, we don't want our partners to go to jail. Yeah. We don't want them killed by police. We just want the violence to stop. And sending people to jail and prison does not make the violence stop. It actually escalates, increases, and just repeats the cycle. Yeah. And I think that's one of my frustrating thing about this conversation about how we define and implement public safety. None of it is data driven, not qualitatively, not quantitatively. Because if we were actually looking at the data, we would recognize that the way that we implement public safety is the greatest failure of this country.
Yeah, I didn't think about it like that. Dara, at the beginning of the book, you start with building an activist, and I loved reading, the book and reading this because I was not a person born into the movement. I became part of the movement when I went to college, and I tell young people all the time, I was like, look, I grew up in the Bronx when it was burning hip hop. My mom got some money, moved us to the suburbs. I had this experience for 5 days. I was like it's not even a town, it's called the village of Elmsford. I had 37 people. I graduated, like our schools were the same. The high school was some 7 to 12, only 200 and some people. I never in my life saw a metal detector. Our school trips
Wow.
were to Spain. My school trip was to Spain, Portugal, Morocco. Like it might as well have been a private setting, but and because fam where I grew up, right? My parents to this day have their business in the Bronx in Soundview, and then my dad's been there over 60 years now with his business. But like I would spend 5 days in this idyllic, utopic kind of community, and then every weekend I'm staying in the Bronx to see all my cousins and my titis and stuff. And the older I got, I began to realize I'm not smarter than y'all. You literally don't have the same opportunity because we live 21 miles apart from the city and the suburbs. So when I went to college, I had a lot of anger towards my parents. Like, if I grew up bilingual, I grew up to be proud Puerto Rican, participate in everything, culturally, all of that. How come y'all didn't even tell me that we were a colony? Like, I never even thought about why I was a U.S. citizen. I don't even remember my parents being like, so Pedro Albizu, nothing. And so when I went to college, I had so much anger. And one of my professors is Black psychology. She's like, you're going through these encounters and you're going to get through 5 steps. The first 2 are like, you're mad. Now you're learning your information. Now it's overwhelming because you're going home. Like, then I start calling myself African descendant. And my mom's like, you're Black now? And I was like, I think so. And I was like, Dad, because my dad is phenotypically Black. Like, and it was just everything awakened in me. So you talk about building an activist, and I'm so grateful that my daughter is a movement baby, So if you're building an activist, you said, all my life I have questioned authority wherever I found it. When I was 2 years old, I would pull my toys out in my mom's just clean living room. That weekend, the weekend of Sisa, my mom be like, if you do not polish that glass, put your shit away. And then you said, Mom, this is my house too.
You sound like my daughter.
Dara, I even had a 4th grade teacher, a nun, write on my report card, Dara has no fear. This could be a problem for her in the future. We may want to work on extinguishing this type of behavior. And this was in the 70s, before the school prison pipeline. But my mother read the codes. She started talking to me, and people will ask you, have you always been like this? And you say, isn't everyone like this? Everyone call and push back on authority. In the home I grew up, pushing back against authority was the norm. Much later, in that spirit of pushing back on authority, I entered the policy world in Washington, D.C. I was crying, tears like, and I would say, Mom, all that hell I put you through. I said, my friend just wrote about it. She started at 2. I didn't start till 9.
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, you remember that, and so you have always disrupted, asked the questions that nobody else is asking, and also about your journey as a disability activist.
Yeah. No, well, thank you for reading. And again, my book, To Be a Problem, is out in stores. A Black Woman's Survival in the Racist Disability Rights Movement. I've been blessed. So I grew up. So as you said, I was born in Spain. My dad was in the Air Force. So we lived there. And that's this work we're talking about, right? Like living under a dictator. It was the late 70s. Franco was, right? The dictator there. I remember that. And my mother told me the stories and things, right? Of, being a Black woman in Spain. And they lived in Madrid. My mom refused to live on the base. So they lived in the city. Came back to Newark, New Jersey, where they both grew up, and East Orange and Newark, and raised me. So that's where I was. And Newark, New Jersey is a city of politics. Amira Baraka, I grew up with the Hope House, right? Amira Baraka, I grew up with Mosque Number 5, where the 3 men who killed Malcolm were, that we all knew, right? That's now a documentary, if you want to watch it, about, we all grew up knowing that those are the 3 men who killed Malcolm in Newark. You knew this, right? When I went to church with my grandmother, my grandfather, not my parents, because they were Black people, they weren't going to church, but I would go with grandma. And in the church would be the mayor and the city council. And my grandmother would walk, go over and say, "What are you doing about the school lunches?" So I always knew you could talk to your elected official. Go right ahead. My grandfather, my maternal, my mother's father, pops would carry voter registration cards. We would go to dinner and he said, "Hey, hey, pops, how you doing? Good. You vote? You registered to vote? You registered to vote?" So that was just norm, right? My mother was a Delta. We went to AME church. So that was just instilled in me. I went to a private school. You were just talking about, right? I had I call it like a schizophrenic life, right? Living in, not the ghetto, but, Newark compared to Upper Montclair, New Jersey, where my mom said you can go to school, a private Catholic school where I had 10 people in my class. I was the first Black to go there. It was a boarding school, and my mother said, "Now she ain't staying here. That's not happening." So I would go back and forth. But I say that to say, my first political action in life was making Martin Luther King's birthday a holiday. And I had the white girls in the 4th grade sitting in the driveway writing letters. That's when we used to write a letter, put it in an envelope, and send it to and doing that and saying, I want to make Martin Luther King's birthday a holiday. So I say all that to say, and I talk about it in the book, but To Be a Problem is from W.E. Du Bois, Souls of Black Folks. When he was in the South talking about racism, they called him a problem. So I was always in spaces with a bunch of white folks and me, and I'm like, "Look, why am I in this space?" And then it happened with disabilities, and they would always call me a problem. "You are a problem," because every time I came in the room, I brought up, "You bring up race." I said, "No, I am race. I'm Black woman." I don't understand that. What are you talking about? And so I journal, and I had wrote in my journal a long time ago, I'm gonna write a book and it's gonna be called To Be a Problem. So that's where that comes from. But I have been blessed to be, this has been part of my life. As I said, even being a Delta, my mom, when she kind of left the movement, she left the Hope House, and Amir Baraka, Ras Baraka is the mayor of Newark. Amir Baraka's famed poet, that's his father. And the Hope House. She, went back to her sorority and did a lot of things. And so I was always active politically. I was always reading, learning. The next one I did was South Africa, right? And so the other side of that too is people always say, and this is where it's important because of the times we're in now, is how do you stay so hopeful, Dara? How do you stay, like you were just talking about, Kat, like we have to move and reinvent and do things differently. We have to look at the things that are lacking, which we said we need more organizers. We need to write. How do you keep doing this? How do you not want to get up every morning and do this? Number one for me is I definitely put my family first. They are my number one priority. I'm not married. I don't have any children, but my family comes. I have a brother, I have family, my girlfriends, my best friends. That's number one. Number two, I do what I can do. I learned a long time ago to say no to people. Like, no, I'm not doing it, whatever. And number three is these things that I see, what I'm going to tell you. When I did Martin Luther King's birthday, I was that kid and said, "Mom, I want to go talk to my senator and my congressman." In the 8th grade, my mother said, okay, I'll make this hot. And they said it'll never happen. And look what happened. It is not only a national holiday, but there is a monument of a Black man on a national mall. He the only one on there. when we fought and said, no, you have to stop South Africa, we not only stop apartheid, but release Nelson Mandela, we were told that would never happen. And look what happened.
Yeah.
Not only was he released, but he became the president of that country in the end of apartheid. I was in Yankee Stadium when he came to New York City. So
I was there too.
Yeah, right. I know, right?
Yeah.
Don't tell me that we can't do these things, and that life ebbs and flows. Right? Things always happen this way. And it is at this time where we need to, and I think, Kat, you said it well, stop eating each other. We need to come together and understand and know that we are not going to do this alone, that all power to the people. Y'all can't keep saying these words, power to the people, all power to the people, for pomp and circumstance. That actually means something.
That's right. Come on.
Yeah.
That actually means that we actually have power. And if you don't believe you have power, then they win. And we're not going to allow that. And I know people keep saying this over and over again, but what we're doing here in DC, getting together and talking ward by ward. When we started our training, I believe in fate and the way the world was. The night before our first orientation, South Korea happened. And I was like, yes, thank you. And if you don't know what happened in South Korea just a couple of weeks ago, it was South Korea. Number one, that's the other thing. People don't know what a dictator is or a fascist is because they didn't grow up with that. These young people under the age of 40, they didn't know Pinochet and Argentina and Philippines. They didn't see that. We did. Those of us our age, we saw that. But anyway, what happened in South Korea, right? The prime minister, he said martial law at 3:00 in the morning. And by 10 a.m., they had 1 million people in the streets.
Mm-hmm.
In the parliament, right? That happens from organizing.
That's right.
That happens from organizing. And somebody tried to tell me, no, that doesn't. If you saw what happened, to the right, they had an orchestra, and to the left, they had a choir. They were singing. And those people came right to that parliament. They knew where to go. If you know anything about bands, the percussions went where they were supposed to go. The horns went where the strings went, and then the choir, the altos, the sopranos, and they started singing the song. They knew what song that comes from organizing. That didn't happen overnight. They split that wall. They split the thing, and they saw 90 people. They have 90 people in their parliament had to come in. They flipped them over that wall. They went inside. The men who went to help them went inside the building and knew where the fire extinguishers were to stick them in the door so that the soldiers couldn't come in. That comes from organizing. They knew that building. They said, go in there and vote to remove the martial law. And if you haven't been following it, they just arrested that man.
I know they were like, no, not good enough.
Right. But that comes from organizing. The largest employer in the country closed down the plant. He said, no, don't come to work. Take your butts and go on the streets. And he went with them. The CEO of $1 million car industry factory went in the streets. Why? Because he's 56. So he was 16. It was 40 years ago that they were a dictatorship. He said, oh, no, not again. That's not happening. And they went in the streets. So when you are organized, you can do these things. And so that's what we've been doing here in DC. And if you look at the data and the way what sociologists look at dictatorship, it only takes 3.9% of your population to resist. So that's in DC, that's only 25,000 people.
But Dara, I think the difference is that will never happen because we're just gonna get shot. Like for real, they'll be like, we weren't trying to bomb them, our bad. I mean, and that's because it's a nation that's filled with weaponry, like weaponry,
And, but we see it happening. Listening, what happened yesterday, even though those people went in front of the White House, we told our members, we told people to call Congress. And that's why, and Congress, right? And Congress did get involved because those phone calls started happening. And also, you went to judiciary. We do have 3 tiers. We told the legal eagles, what are y'all doing over here? And they went, and the judge put an injunction and said, no, you cannot do it. We do have processes that we have to follow, and that is organizing too. If you don't know what lawyers to call, we knew who to call and say, you are running the nonprofit organization. Your lawyer should be suing. So they knew and they got it. I'm just saying, it work in certain ways, and we can't give up on that. What I also want to say is, and I hear you, Rosie, we live in a very violent and a very punitive country. But what we can't do is just sit here and not do anything, right? Not do anything that doesn't protect our neighbors and protect ourselves. And I'm telling you, here in DC, number one, you were talking about a cat. You name a law enforcement agency, it is here in DC.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
Okay. CIA, FBI.
You guys got like 10 or 12.
We call them in hip hop the alphabet boys.
Yeah.
There you go. They're all here, right?
Who are you now? WXO, I don't know.
You name it, they are here, right? The Secret Service, AFT, right? They are all here. FBI, they're all here. We were in a military state for 6 weeks after January 6th. People don't understand and know that because they didn't have to live here. They didn't have to live with those soldiers walking around this city, the district, because of what happened there. We've already been through this here in DC, and we pushed back and said, enough. Send those soldiers home. Take those fences down. We have had enough. So I'm just telling you that in certain places, in certain pockets of this country, that is, to me, what's going to have to happen. I don't know what it looks like everywhere else, but here in DC, we coming in these streets, and we're going to let these people know you're not going to do this to us.
Yeah, and Kat, I want your analysis. The way I came up in movement organizing is operational unity. I don't have to like you. I don't have to go to dinner with you. We don't have to talk every day. We need to bring that back to young, a generation, but operational unity. Part of that, those also requires that us as organizers trust each other. I don't have to do everything. Oh my God, Dara's gonna hold it down. Then she's gonna say we need something like this. Then Kat's gonna put something out and be like, listen, the way you can support is this. So that strategy, I think, Kat, I completely agree with you that we need to create a new pipeline, but not through the nonprofits, the grassroots hardcore organizers that intersect working class, well, for a better term, people that don't have the resources they should. What do you think about what Dara was just saying? Can it be like that if we do that locally? What does that look like?
I think it's all roads in, right? And that's why when I was talking, I said that is not my work. My work is to develop the organizers that will choose, right? Do they want to be building mutual aid systems and structures, or do they want to bang on the doors of City Hall, right? We know that it's agitation in the streets, not necessarily inside of those halls. Agitation in the streets has to complement who's ever agitating inside in order for the state to give you a concession. And let's be really clear, that's all. When we get wins, that's the state going, go home, right? And we have to be prepared for when then they reinstate whatever it is that we got them to say no to. And I believe that we're in an all roads in period of time, right? People are going to have to bang at the federal level, have to bang at the state level, have to bang at the local level. But I don't think any of that matters if we are not building our own system structures, defense apparatus, right, on the streets in a grassroots way. And you know what, Rosa? APTP, became a C3, I think 4 years ago, because I woke up during 2020 and all that white guilt had poured more money into our bank account than we had ever seen before. And I said, we're going to become a C3 or I'm going to go to prison. And I will tell you, if I could roll back the clock and give all that money back and still be a cadre organization,
you would?
That absolutely, because now we're in this period of time where people now, because you're in a C3, think you have a right to make 6 figures to do revolutionary work. It's not an honor. It's not a privilege. They have a right to make this much. And they have a right to that. They have a right to that. I said, well, our people have a right to breathe, right? And we've lost some folks have lost why we do what we do. And so in the same way, like I dabbled with, the inside out strategy, like when I ran for mayor and like that. And I think it's important that I've walked certain roads because now I can say, nah, I did that.
Yeah.
Right. And I know that that doesn't work. Or I did this. I know that that doesn't work. And I can show you why. Right. What has always worked in I won't even say how many decades of organizing and being an organizer, is being in the streets with the people and building with the people directly. That has always worked. Organizing is what gets the good. And I think the other thing is, you were talking, Dara, that I was thinking about the other problem with not turning out organizers and not for our movement to not be rooted in an organizing framework is this thing about instant gratification, right? Like people do a campaign and they lose the first round and their feelings get hurt and they go home. Right? Like we talking about, this is lifetime work.
Oh, preach this.
Lifetime work. Even people talk about 2020 as the beginning, right, of the fight against police terror. And I said often, I was like, y'all, this is the middle of something. It's the middle of something that generations before you built.
That's right.
And mind you, they kill more of us now than they did pre 2020. This is lifetime work. And then in terms of you said something I think is so important, Rosa, that we deal with really out here in the Bay, because there's a particular kind of left that exists out here. That if they don't agree with your tactic or strategy, then they attack. Like, it's vicious and it's violent and it's vile, as opposed to if that's your get down. If your thing is to engage in a certain way, and I'm not going to list it out because then I'm attacked. Then I'm doing what they do. Then you should go do that. Please go do that. Break every day of every week. Handle that. We're doing this over here. And how do these things complement each other? Or we're operating on our side, right? Like, we need to be having that conversation, not you were this because of that, or I'm talking to Dara and be like, well, you were a policymaker, so you ain't really down, right? Like, it's maddening. But what that reflects to me back is that our generation, we grew up in the kind of movement where people, are still rotting in jail, in prisons, in American concentration camps, or are dead, or still underground, or on the run. Right? We grew up inside of movements with discipline, structure, and accountability. Yeah. We grew up inside of organizations where political education wasn't a luxury; it was a mandate. Right? We grew up inside of that, and we have somehow we failed because this next generation. I mean, my daughter has it. Your kids have it.
Well, look, my daughter at 20 has told me she's very disappointed at the previous generation, maybe not ours as much, kind of what are they, the millennial generation. She's like, I was marching for Black Lives Matter to free people, not for them to be on a cover. And I'm not saying just Black Lives Matter.
No, we have monetized, commodified, and celebritized our movement.
All of it. And it started
like camera action.
Trayvon, right? Then a year later, Ferguson. The reason I knew Ferguson was something so different was because they were straight, the hood, the people. It was a small community. Everybody kind of knew each other. So when these flyover activists, they were like, yo, Al Sharpton, bounce.
That's right.
What, we're gonna get out of here. But now, how many people we know that are millionaires writing about Ferguson, teaching about Ferguson? They don't want to talk about the 5 Black men that we all know, including
murdered.
Palestinian. We knew they were murdered. They've abandoned Ferguson. So like, I'm not as angry anymore. I think what I would tell younger folks is, first, be clear that everybody has an ego. Be clear that some of us will get in front on the stage or whatever. We have the skill set, but we believe in our ability to connect with people, right? And understand, like you said, movements first just don't die. Very, very clear that from the giddy up from Trayvon to right now, it's been infiltrated. We know how BLM has been hijacked. We know what's happened with the Women's March. And I love them, sisters and brothers. But now I say to them, You should have listened. You should have listened when I was in your living room saying, don't do this way. I had just finished watching Stanley Nelson's Black Panther
The
documentary.
Vanguard.
And one of the brothers there was like, the best thing about the Black Panther Party was our youth and exuberance. And the worst thing was our youth and exuberance. Like, you don't know everything. And do you really think they're putting you in this world of the glitterati for what, 3 to 4 years? And then nothing, because that's what capitalism does. It monetizes this. But you have to also come in at some point, and those younger folks need to be accountable, not in a horrible way. Sit down with yourself. I've done this with myself around hip hop activism. With everything that's been coming out, like the evidence, although so many of us knew, and people like, if you knew, why you didn't stop it? Well, we didn't have videos. Like 12 years ago, if I'm up in a studio with some rappers, or 15 years ago, I didn't even have a phone. It's like, be clear that at some level, this is going to be overtaken if you let it. But if you want to sell out your ethics and morality and all that, I do know from the move people, they're like, consistency is the key. Even if you don't go hard every day, it's the consistency, and the people have to trust you. So when we're talking about campaigns and winning, I get angry when every political prisoner is freed by Obama, right? With Oscar Lopez Rivera or Leonard Peltier. The first thing people would say, Obama freed Oscar. I said, Obama didn't free Oscar. He was, the Puerto Rican community would like, we will vote for you, but you're going to have to pardon Oscar Lopez when you're done. And he did that. But that was a 30-year campaign. Right. Leonard Peltier, a 30-year campaign. Mutulu Shakur adjusting and saying, all right, let's come from it from another level. All our PPs aren't out, but in the last decade, we've seen the fruits of the work that started in 93 at the Jericho National March, then the 95 rally. The last thing I'll say to the young people, read a damn book. Read a book. Take some notes. Like, there's a reason we call Souls of Black Folk a classic. There's a reason there are 40 Black Panther Party memoirs, and there's not too many young ones, but it's growing. Like, read a book. Stop acting like you know everything at the end. Like, for real, fam. Like, humble yourself. With all this being said, we're all activists and organizers, and I think it requires for us to have our analysis too. But at the end of the day, we're going to be with y'all. We're going to tell you the truth. We're not going to co-sign on everything. But like both of you are saying, this ain't a sprint. This isn't like you wake up 9 to 5. This is in your DNA, and hopefully it gets passed down. So thank you so much, both, for spending extra time with us. I want both of you to have just some closing thoughts, or even if there's something coming up soon that we can participate and help. And as well, if you could share all your social media and contact information.
Go ahead, Kat.
Nah, I started. You go, Dara.
Oh, well, I hear you. I completely agree, Rosa, with a lot you're saying. But I've seen it too. I'll say this. It wasn't mentioned with all the things we're talking about, but I work because I did transportation and pretextual stops, and how we got that defunded from the Department of Transportation. That was Decarcerate Memphis, who have been, like you said, been working on this since 2010. And unfortunately, the horrible killing of Tyree Nichols down there really catapulted us to get that. And they were great with that. All the lights, camera, action folks went down to Memphis, and they said, who are you? We don't know you. Get the hell out of here. And they kept going with what they needed. And so one part is done, DOT. Now we got to get DOJ, Department of Justice, to stop funding pretextual stops. But anyway, I just want to say, so there are pockets of people out there doing that. I want to say this too, and I appreciate you, my sister Rosa. I need people to understand and know I'm going to take this time to uplift her. Rosa is in a space that she should not be in. She is a revered queen in our work, and she should be out on the speaking circuit making as much money as she can to take care of her and her family. And those of you out there who can make that happen need to make that happen. You need to stop. This is when we need to start holding ourselves accountable. When you said it, Rosa, when you said when people harm our community, we don't do anything. We don't say anything to these people. We don't uplift. But the people who are sitting here and toiling the soil, if you have ever been on a farm, you need to understand and know that crops end, you take them up, you throw them out, you toil the soil. Queen Rosa Clemente is one of those who've been toiling the soil for years. She has never turned her back on her people. She has never left the fact that Black liberation and the liberation of the people is what is needed. And for her to not be getting the reaping what she's been sowing, we're not going to have it anymore. So those of you out there who have connections, who know people to get this woman in the spaces that she should be in, need to be doing that. And that's what I'm going to say about this and my sister. And I'm, of course, going to end this and say to all of you, protect your peace. If you don't do anything else in this stuff, protect your peace. But at the same time, understand and know we got a job to do. And it is the next 4 years. No, it's the next.
It's the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The rest of your life. I mean, I want to tie to what Dara just said in terms of the folks that are toiling have been toiling the soil for decades and decades and decades. I think what I would add on top of that is if mainstream media is presenting to you the same 1 or 2, 3 faces, by mainstream media, I mean CNN, MSNBC, right? Yeah. You should ask yourself the question, what is it about them that makes the state feel like they are safe to be the spokesperson for the rest of us?
Well, I agree with that, but also also our progressives are doing the same thing, honey. Democracy Now! Over there, she doing the same shit, showing the same people over and over again. One day want to talk about abolitionism, and then she gonna have the Sandy Hook families on, but you don't want to talk about the fact that Sandy Hook want police all in schools. Like, let's do
Wait, hold on.
Right. I was making a little bit of a different point. I'm talking about that the state allows the folks to be the face of our movement that do not threaten the state. Mm-hmm. Because if you are a threat to the state is not going to uplift you, right? And so you should actually be looking for the people that are doing the work in the cut. And have decades and decades of toiling. And I give you mad respect and love, Rosa, also Dr. Melina. I mean, there's so many people and so many names that nobody has ever heard, and that's actually the engine of our movement. Other names you've never heard, right? That are doing the most critical work, but the most unseen work, right? When the cameras aren't there, door knocking, late night campaign planning, letter writing, because some people just do write, and I hope you're writing to our brothers and sisters on the other side of the wall. So I guess my final words, and I say this, I'm going to say it the way that I say it in the Bay. People say, well, what can I do, Kat? What can I do? And the first thing I say is join an organization, research, and find an organization that is working in a movement the way that makes your heart sing. Right. And you don't have to do it like Kat. Tear gas tastes like crap. You ain't got to go stand on 14th and Broadway and get flashback. We need communicators. We need people to watch the babies. We need cooks. We need writers. We need lawyers. We need paralegals. We need people to drive cars. We need people to take care of the elderly. We need child care. Like, there's so much to do, right? If we're going to build a sustainable movement. And then I say, if you can't find an organization out of the 9,462,152.5 that we have in the Bay Area or in the country, start your own. But do something, don't agonize, organize. Organizing gets the goods. It gets the goods. It gets the goods every single time. And remember that organizing is a craft, and go find you someone that has a footprint in this thing, that understands, knows organizing, and can show you how they've organized for material wins for our people. And study, humble yourself, sit at their feet and learn something. And then
there's much nostalgia.
There's so much, and this is not 1964 or 8 or whatever, right? And the living party members will tell you it is 2025. You need to do 2025 stuff. Stop trying to be them. And by the way, there is no. We should not be reveling in martyrdom. If you haven't sat in a hole with no contact for anybody for 50 years behind bars, how dare you revel in martyrdom? The movement does not need any more caged or dead organizers, activists, or advocates. That is trash. We also don't need to work, smoke, drink, die, as we were taught, right? White supremacy doesn't sleep. You don't either. That is trash.
Yeah.
We need to build a sustainable movement. We need to stop eating each other. We need to take hold of our craft. We need to heal, and we need to breathe.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
It's not about self-care. It's about healing justice, which is an intentional interruption of the impact of white supremacy. So you can follow me. I'm Real Cat Brooks or Cat Brooks on all of the places. I'm still even on that hellhole that they call X. Also Anti-Police Terror Project that is on all the socials. You can follow what we're doing. And I want to invite both of you. No more performative King Marchers, Rosa. You know, for 11 years, this was our 11th year. We've been doing Reclaim the Radical Legacy of King. We don't just do a day. We do a massive march, which brings out thousands of people. And then we do a week of trainings, shutdowns, films, educational events, healing things, etc. So next day, you all come out here and live in the radical legacy.
Oh, I didn't get, and yeah, I'll be there. I'll be there. Thank you for that.
Contacted.
We also need historians. We need people.
Yes, all of it.
Well, that's one new thing for me. I'm a trained historian in Black Studies, right? I'm finally finishing the dissertation. For me, the way I look at history is here's the book. Who's not in the book?
Yeah.
You know, who's not in the book?
There you go.
You know,
and you can find me on social media, same thing, Instagram, X. I'm still on there because I gotta see what's going on, and Threads and Blue Sky at NJDC07. I moved from New Jersey to DC in 07.
Oh, right on.
On everything.
The book again?
And my book is To Be a Problem, a Black Woman's Survival in the Racist Disability Rights Movement. Dara Baldwin. If you go, you can get it at independent bookstores. Please buy from Black independent bookstores. I am in there in some of them. I will say this. People are upset because I have the word racist in the title. And they're like, oh, that's kind of, I said, well, that's book banning. But anyway, it's out there. You could get it from Amazon if you wish as well. And if you go to a bookstore, I am blessed to be right next to James Baldwin.
Wow.
It's an honor.
Thank you for this brilliant almost hour and 20 minutes. I really, really appreciate it. Luckily, I don't have to rush things. So I would encourage everybody who's watching to please watch the now 4-episode documentary on Sean Puffy Combs. It's called The Fall of P. Diddy. It aired 2 episodes Monday, 2 episodes on Tuesday by the incredible documentarian Yoruba Richan. I was glad to play like the smallest role in that because as this was coming out, I was at an event where I was heckled and yelled at, like a hip hop women's empowerment event. All the women in hip hop that I always knew were foul, were extra foul. It was pretty horrible. And then they made a whole podcast about me and my statements on Rick Ross and Diddy and Bambaataa, you know. And I wasn't really mad at the audience. It was a little weird to be like a hip hop thing, but it wasn't Lincoln Center. What I got more to this day, I'm furious. I hope I never see this person again. At someone that I thought was a friend for 30 years. And then I realized, oh, no matter what, it still happens. And it just happened that Yoruba was there. And then a couple months later, this stuff comes out. But I think this is one of the best ones because she made an extra episode. She just did an interview 3 days before the documentary wrapped. So the 5th interview was taped on January 22nd, where Puff Daddy's executive assistant finally went on the record. He's the one that provided the preliminary things to the feds. Right. And and the reason I bring this up is I told people, like, this is it. I'm not doing nothing for no more predators. All right. Let's understand the Me Too movement was not about the predators or the perpetrators and what happens to them or not. It's about the survivors. And I want people to remember that so many of us are victims. We're also survivors. That's right. But like you said, protect your peace. I think at this point, if you're like, I'm 52, I don't have time for this anymore. I'm not going to talk about hip hop anymore. Been talking about it for 25 years. It don't change. The culture, all of that doesn't mean we throw it out. What it means, it takes a repivoting, or it just says some things just don't work. And that's okay to say something just doesn't work and move on. I thank you both.
Thank you.
Everybody follow them. They're doing incredible work. And let's see where we meet up in real life. Love you, sister.
Yes. Love you too.
Love you
All
too.
right. Blessings.
Peace. Be careful out there. Peace and
Yeah.
blessings.
All right, y'all. Peace.
All right. Love, love. So thank you, everybody. Thanks, everybody. That was an incredible interview. Again, the show is sponsored by Cooperation Jackson. And well, anyway. And tomorrow, 7 p.m. Thursday for Can't Stop Our Blackness, I'm interviewing a Mexican American brother. His name is Nolan, talking about ethnic studies in America and the streets to the suites. And Vanessa Diaz, who just wrote a great article on Bad Bunny and has taught the first Bad Bunny class in higher education. So tomorrow, thank you, JB Taylor. I appreciate you. So tomorrow, 7 p.m., that's the Can't Stop Our Blackness. Vanessa Diaz, Google, read the article she did on Rolling Stone about Bad Bunny and check out her class. She created the first Bad Bunny class in academia. And then Nolan Cabral, who's going to talk about Mexican and ethnic studies and the attacks coming out against that. So I appreciate you. Follow these two sisters. Keep catching me here or on YouTube when it streams live. Peace, everybody. Have a good night. Peace, everybody. Have a good night.